do it live. Okay. We'll do it live.
Drop the mic with Jason Hunt.
I actually grew up in Scarborough. But then found a wonderful woman, moved west because that's where she's from. So we live where she's from. And so we're in the West End, Royal York and Eglinton area. If you're
Love it. Love that area. It's a nice area. Anything east of Yonge is like foreign to me. You know, it's like, might as well be going south of the border. You know, it's just like, I don't know what's happening there. So I grew up in Brampton. And then went from there, lived in Toronto, then lived in Japan, then came back to Canada, lived in Toronto, and then just kept getting further and further west, less of a need being in Toronto. So went to Oakville, then out to Guelph, and now Fergus, Ontario. Not sure if you know where Fergus is.
I do. I must admit I've never been there. But I do know approximately where it is.
I'm surprised you haven't been there because Narcity or BlogTO did an article during the pandemic saying one of the best day trips out of the city was like Fergus, Elora. And ever since that article launched, it's been crazy on weekends, like especially in Elora.
Really?
The residents living in Elora hate it. You can't go out on a weekend without having to battle like crazy traffic, believe it or not, in Elora, Ontario. So quite crazy, but it's one of those things, it's all relative. I complain now because my commute from my house to the grocery store is 10 minutes instead of 8, where having to battle Toronto traffic, you know all about that where you are at Royal York and Eglinton, right?
Yeah, well, it takes me 10 minutes. They're doing construction for I don't mean to bore, but they're doing construction for all the new subway lines that are going in across Eglinton and all that kind of stuff. So 10 minutes gets me a block. Could walk it literally faster. You're sitting there and see somebody walking by and you drive, hey, I'm beating this person, and they just walk by. Yeah.
Oh, wild. And so for you, your business, did it start on the west side of Toronto when you were doing the promotional products?
So actually I started my first business back when I was university. So speaking of the West End, I actually went to Laurier University in Waterloo.
Yep.
And so back when I was in third year university, I decided to start up my own business. And so my business started out of my dorm room and actually out of my mother's basement back in 97, to completely date myself. And so I did a point of purchase sampling business. And basically what that means, you ever should go to Costco or food stores and people are giving out samples, or even at the LCBO, if you go to a liquor store, we actually did beer and wine sampling back in the day. So working out of my dorm room and literally my mom and dad's basement, I had Bacardi as a client, I had Labatt as a client, I had Sleeman as a client. And, one of those things to date myself, I was on the phone with Bacardi. And back in the day when you used to have a landline and somebody else in the house could pick up the landline, my mother picked up the other end of the phone and was like, David, are you on the phone? Who are you on the phone with? Like literally while I'm on the phone with the client. And I laugh at it now, but it was back in the day, it was just nightmarish. And I drove a car that was old and just a bucket. And I actually one time stalled it in the parking lot of a wine distributor we were working with and had to get my car towed from a client's parking lot. So
no way.
I started in the West, but man, it was not a smooth start. By any means. Let's put it
I can remember that. I can remember when I started my business, I drove like an old Honda Fit at the time, and I would be, and I don't know, I'm not a car guy. I could care less about cars, but I would be so embarrassed to park that car in front of a potential client for a sales meet, just because I don't know if they're judging me or not, right? So I'd like park like miles away and do the trek walk in, right? But that's funny. Yeah, I know we all had that story of when we drove a bucket of some sort to start our business to make ends meet, right? So with promotional, was there something that drove you specifically to the promotional product space? Like for some people, like marketing is just in them to, it's been a piece of them. And maybe there's, a recollection of when you're really, really young, when you were doing some sort of a marketing endeavor and it just led you down this path to marketing.
Yeah, no, I wish I had a story like that. But really, when I got out of school, after I sold my first business, I was looking around for something to do. And I was basically offered 2 jobs. One was as a print salesman, selling paper for print and paper. And then the second one was as a promotional products consultant, working for a promotional company, doing the marketing side of things. And so I said, you know what? I'm going to start working as a promotional products person because I didn't know where print was going. And that actually worked out to be a good decision back in the day. But what ended up happening then was I worked for another company for a year and kind of learned the ropes. I learned how to cold call. I learned to knock on doors, literally with a bag full of golf shirts, knocking on the door saying, hey, do you guys need anything, from door to door to door to door, getting rejected, harshly rejected for months and months and months, and then started to make it work, started to get decent at sales. And then unfortunately, that owner and I had a falling out, and I left the promotional products business that I was in and got into another promotional products business, got recruited into another promotional products business. And then while I was there is actually where I founded and co-founded a company called Achievers.com. And so I'm not sure if you're familiar with Achievers, but basically I was working in the promotional business, working with a company, a bank, one of the banks, and they had said, you know, we've got this great group of people in our call center, but we don't know how to incent them. We don't know how to reward them. We don't know how to tell them they're doing a great job other than kind of giving them some cash and tell them they're doing a great job. So I came up with the idea for Achievers.com, which at the time was called I Love Rewards. And that was the birth of really my second company inside, kind of underneath the promotional products business. And with that, unfortunately, again, a couple of years later, had a falling out with my co-founders of that. So left that and then started my own promotional business. Now we're into 2002, 2003 era when I actually started my own promotional business. So it wasn't for the love of t-shirts and hat shirts and sweatshirts and logos. It was just kind of fell one step into another. And then I knew it really well. So started to grow up from there. So
those dopamine, those sales dopamine hits, like this kept you coming back for more, right? I noticed that too. When you take a step, at least for myself, when I took a step out of the sales aspect, when I started my business, I was the only one selling and got really good at it because I was not a great salesperson. I was passionate about it, right? And I actually believed in what I was selling. But when I took a step out of sales and did more of a marketing role, I did miss those dopamine hits. You know, there's like a void that needed to be filled. I almost felt like I wasn't being productive, you know?
It's definitely a different feeling. I kind of view it as all part of the same thing. I view, sales and marketing under kind of an acquisition umbrella. You're acquiring clients, you're acquiring, customers, however you want to look at it. And under that same acquisition, it's not like, from my perspective, that marketing stops and sales begins. It's that it's all part of the same continuum. And depending on how you orchestrate the journey of the customer, they start with marketing, they start with awareness, they go through the whole journey associated with understanding your product, understanding who you are, understanding the solution that you offer, right through to then helping them buy. And then once they've got the solution, then it moves over to the second part of business, which I consider delivery. And then there's the third part of business that's really kind of administration and running your business and keeping you out of jail and all those kinds of things, filing your taxes, doing all that good stuff. But really, I look at sales and marketing under that first umbrella.
So when you went from promotional products and took that leap into tell me about that leap from that and evolving into what was the next endeavor.
So the next endeavor was actually as a result of the Great Recession. For those of you who are old enough to remember the Great Recession, I was running the promotional products business, doing a good business, growing year after year. And then Lehman Brothers is really kind of the metric for me. Is Lehman Brothers went out of business in September. And I thought, oh, we're in lots of trouble now. But actually business kind of continued through to the end of 2007 to 2000. And then January 2008, we started losing $70,000 a month. It just was this nightmare that nothing was happening. So I realized that the traditional sales model I was in of direct sales, cold calling, the way it was door to door, just wasn't working anymore. So we had to get good at digital marketing. So I went out and bought 3,000 URLs and put up 500 websites to get good at SEO. So this is what happened. The promo business went to zero. I went out and decided to get good at online marketing and doing SEO for ourselves. So by 2008, 2009, a whole bunch of those websites were really starting to rank and do well for others, like do well for those particular niches or niches that they were in. And so when people started saying to me, hey, can you do this for us? I said, sure. So about 2010, the second business was born. So the promotional business came back because of our SEO business, our SEO efforts. And then the digital marketing agency that's called AOK Marketing was born out of that necessity. And then people saying, hey, can you do this for us? So that's how that business was born.
Okay, so you kind of tripped and fell into digital marketing because there was a need, obviously, at the time, and you didn't really have the promotional products happening, but yet you came back full circle when you saw things were rolling again. You got obviously SEO'd the crap out of promotional products and made that a high authority site for promotional products. So, okay, so now, do any of those sites, those 500 sites that you built back in 2008 to 10, are they still ranking today? Are they still relevant?
They are, because I now own PromotionalProducts.com and PromotionalProducts.ca, but I bought those in 2017. And so what I ended up doing though was back in 2002, to take you back again, when I started that side of the business, I reached out to the guy who owned PromotionalProducts.com, and I said to him, hey, I'd love to buy it from you. And he said, well, it's going to be, I forget what the number was, $75,000. And I was like, okay, that's crazy. I'm just starting my business. I don't have that kind of money. And it was 75,000 US. So I really didn't have that kind of money. And then as we moved forward, I kept in touch with them. Hey, how much is it now? Oh, now it's 130. And then a couple of years later, hey, how much is it now? Oh, it's 220. Okay, how much is it now? Like the price just kept going up and up. And then come 2010, 2012, it started to drop. I followed up with him for 6 months, every 6 months for 15 years. Until he finally said, you know what, Dave, I was going to keep this for my son. My son doesn't want it. You caught me on a good day. I'm willing to sell it to you today. So I said, name your number. It was a decent number, but it was, it was less than he'd asked in the past. So as a result of that, I was like, okay, fine, let's do this. So I bought it from him. And then I thought, you know what, since I own the .com now, I wonder who owns the .ca. And interestingly enough, it was a guy who lived less than a kilometer from me.
Wow.
In Toronto. And he said, you know what, I'd love to sell it to you, Dave, but I'm waiting for the .com. And so I said to him, I just bought the .com. And he said, okay, fine, I'll sell you the .ca. So literally within a week, I bought the .com and the .ca and put them up and started to work. But I realize that's a very long answer, but yeah, I mean, some of the sites that we put up back in 2006, 7, 8, 9, 10, still rank.
Why would you take that approach as opposed to just being like, oh, can we just partner on this?
You mean, why did I buy it?
Yeah, I mean, because if he had an existing business, as somebody with a marketing background, going in there and just going for a 50-50 split or something like that to optimize the crap out of it, take your new direction, he's still making his generating income from it. Does that approach ever cross your mind to partner instead of just buying it outright?
It did. And I asked him about that. And he tried to make it into a directory of sorts. He tried to make it into basically a network of sorts. He tried a couple different things. He tried to sell some product direct for the .com I'm talking about, in specific, PromotionalProducts.com. He tried a couple different things. And every time I saw him kind of change the website, I'd call him up again and be like, hey, are you interested? But he was never interested to kind of share into what he was doing, wasn't interested to talk to me about what was going on. So
yeah, probably better not to partner in some cases. Not every partnership works out. I'm sure you've had opportunities with businesses over the years to have those partner type of scenarios. Have you went down that path of partnering with businesses or having equity in the business as opposed to a monthly retainer type of thing?
Absolutely. I mean, my first business, the one that I started back in university, I actually had a friend of mine's dad was the partner in that business. He was the finance, I was the everything else. And so that was interesting. Yeah, we got along great. I ended up selling it back to him at the end of the day, and made a little bit of money. My second business, I had a couple of co-founders, and that partnership unfortunately went south. But that business itself actually sold back in 2015 for $110 million US. So the business itself did quite well. A number of people did well on it over the years. But unfortunately, the partnership side of things and on that side didn't work out. So my last partnership was back in 2002. But before, I now have a partner in an investment fund that we work together on. And that's been a great partnership. We value our relationship before the business. I think it's a maturity thing as well as a experience thing on both our parts, because he had partners that he had bad experiences with, and I did too. And so as a result, I think we treat each other as we'd want to be treated, and therefore it's a great partnership.
I think it's so important. I've learned that lesson too through the experience side of it, and just partnering with the wrong people. Not to say they're bad workers, but just to say there wasn't a good fit. Now finally in a position where my business partner is very much focused on the operation and finance, which are things that don't really care to be focused on, and I could be a brand ambassador. And I think if you can find that synergy with a business partner, it's happy days, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of the really important things is, people tend to want to partner with people who are like them. Like if you're good at sales and I'm good at sales, we can really sell each other on how good we are together, right? But if you find somebody who's good at something that you're not, that's the real key. So as you mentioned with your partnership, somebody who's good at finance and the numbers, and you're good at the podcast and selling, those are really complementary skills. So if you can find somebody who's a great technical co-founder, or somebody who's a great marketing co-founder if you don't have that, or somebody who's a real visionary, trying to find the people who have the skills that you don't have is the real key, because you need to kind of create that well-rounded business to succeed in the market out there today.
Definitely. And speaking about, marketing today and what's, I know, at least in our business, and I'm sure in yours as well, things have changed so much over the course of the last 2 years, whether it's packages changing every 3 months, or new ad placements, or new tools that we're adopting. Maybe you could talk to me a bit, Dave, about how you're integrating AI into your marketing.
Yeah, we use it all the time. I mean, AI is super important to be able to get a real grasp and brainstorm. I actually, a lot of the questions I get asked today are with AI and AIO, AI optimization, as opposed to search engine optimization or answer engine optimization, whatever you want to call it, because that's that side of the business. And people are like, hey, I'm just going to get the AI to write a whole bunch of copy for me and put it on my website. And I tend to think of copy in 3 different buckets. The first is kind of foundational information about your company. Like say you're a lawyer, you have foundational information about the law that you practice and the different things. Then the level above that tends to be news-based content. If that lawyer, if something comes out where there's a big lawsuit, you could capitalize on that and publish some content. And then the third bucket really is thought leadership and authenticity and reality. And so with those 3 buckets, it's kind of like, okay, I need to have foundational content. The news happens. I can certainly piggyback with my experience on it. And then authentic content is really important thing. So being able to optimize for the machines, because they act a little bit differently than Google, the search engine, does, it's really, really important to be as authentic, to do stuff and then talk about the stuff you've done is really the easiest thing that I use and try to help people in terms of understanding what they should write about, the content they should have. So AI is a huge thing that's happening on that side of the business with the SEO side of the business. How do you optimize your site? What do you do? What about your images? Are the LLMs, the large language models, are they crawling my site? How do they crawl it? How we indexed? I mean, there's a ton of different things that are happening on the AI side of things. Then on the paid search marketing side of things, the tools are all getting easier and easier and easier to use because Google is integrating AI into their tools. Meta is integrating AI into their tools. So they're trying to make it easier and easier for people to be able to use the tools to spend more money, because that's how they make their money, right? So it's super important at this point.
Mark Zuckerberg on a recent podcast mentioned his vision and direction for Meta, and that, basically calling out the death to creative agencies, because everything is going to be as simple as putting a prompt into Meta and it coming up with the creative, the ad copy, the description, the headline. Everything is done there with a simple prompt, making it very easy for small business owners to create ads. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I don't disagree. But where I potentially disagree is the level of help that people will want. I see what you just described to me as being the reality for sure in maybe a decade, maybe a little bit less than that, that most 90% of people will just type something into the AI and the AI will do it. In the short term, it's going to be the small businesses who can't afford a creative agency that are going to use this. And so the businesses that serve the small businesses, or the small businesses, are the ones that are going to be impacted, the creative agencies. For the medium and large businesses, those are going to take longer, because people still want to deal with people, that there's somebody driving the bus still. So what I see is, I certainly agree with him that that's the way everything is going. And my time frame of 10 years might be long. It might be 5 years, right? It could be 3 years. I don't know. But it's not going to be an overnight thing. And every platform is moving that way. Whether you're doing ads on Google, Meta, TikTok, whatever it is, it's all moving that way. So I agree with him. I just don't necessarily think it's going to be a flip of a switch. There's going to be an evolution to that way.
I definitely think it's going to take time. I mean, I don't know about you, but for me, I've tested these AI tools. We've done research studies. We've done a research paper internally comparing Meta ad copy versus human copy versus ChatGPT copy. Meta came out on this research study as the worst of the three in terms of generating better cost per clicks, better cost per leads. It just wasn't very good. And if you go through the process of creating an ad in Ads Manager, you'll know how shoddy those AI generated images are that Facebook wants you to put out there. And it's like, well, what difference is there going to be if anybody from KFC to Mary Brown's, if those ads look exactly the same because it's all AI generated, then what's going to be the creative difference that's going to get people to stop from scrolling, right? So I think that's the opportunity for agencies still, is to be that creative arm for the business that can think outside of the box and make something stick out and stand out in that feed, or in that feed, to get people to take that action that you actually want them to take, right?
I agree 100%. I mean, AI is the average, right? The large language models go out and scrape the internet, and then it's the average response, or the average next best word, or the average image, whatever it's going to be. And because of safety reasons, they're putting guardrails on these AI models that are making it even more average, right? Humans have the ability to be able to go above average, extraordinary, think outside the box, that is beyond and potentially risky. Like something like Liquid Death. I'm not sure if you're familiar with the brand, but the water brand called Liquid Death that has, it's water in a can. For those aren't familiar with it who are listening, and on the side of the can is a picture or an illustration of a decaying head, right? Like it's literally a can of water that looks like a beer with a decaying head on the side of it, and it's called Liquid Death. So I can't think of any AI that would come up with that, at least not right now. And some of the marketing campaigns they've done around it has been absolutely brilliant. So is it going to get there? Yes. The thing that we often underestimate is how fast things get better. Right now, Meta's the worst. But another release, they may get, they may jump up above ChatGPT, and ChatGPT may jump up above Gemini, which, whatever model it is that you're using, but they're getting exponentially better. And that's where the real interesting part of all of this lies for me, is how to embrace those tools, how to enable people to use those tools, because there are people who are going to fight against it. But I've been in business so long. I've been in business since before Google was invented, and I run a digital agency. You have to be able to adapt, right? If you don't adapt, you're dead. You're roadkill, right? If you're not reading the menu, you're on the menu. Whatever it is, you need to see that this is coming. This is here. And how do you get ahead of it and enable people to be able to use it is a much better, from my opinion, in my experience, a much better strategy than fighting this. Like if you're a creative and you're a creative agency, this is coming. Like it doesn't matter what you do, you're not going to be able to stop this. The genie's out of the bottle. Like you have to be able to adapt. But people aren't able to be replaced right now on the creative side. So there's, as you say, a big opportunity, a big chance for people to stand out in this environment.
Let's talk about talking about tools, right? Let's talk about those AI tools beyond the buzz. So everyone knows about ChatGPT. Most people are not using the paid version, but everybody knows about ChatGPT. But what other tools, AI tools, are you using in your everyday processes?
Well, we're using some interesting. So we're using Sora, which is part of ChatGPT. We're also using Suno, which I don't know if you're familiar with, but it basically you can write music, so you can write background music associated with different things to, whatever that's the latest TikTok fad or whatever it may be. We're using Midjourney for image generation, and we're using some tools like if people are on the promotional products side of the business, people like I want a logo. There's a tool called Looka. It's just spelled like look with an A at the end. And you can actually do branding and develop a logo, for example, in kind of 5 minutes, and you got your full brand package standards done for free on this tool. So there's a lot of different tools that we're using depending on the application. Excuse me, depending on the application.
So with like platforms so you've adopted these AI tools into your everyday processes, right? So somebody has a
100%.
logo generated, it's going to so-and-so that's going to use Looka to use that sort of a tool. Do you ever suffer a bit of bright, shiny object syndrome? Like I know when you see all these AI tools, there's so many out there that you can just go and use and want to adopt. You spend more time trying to learn it than using it itself to increase efficiency. Have you had that situation happen?
It's like
Every
you're
day.
in my head sometimes. I don't know where, like, absolutely. I mean, I actually was one of the beta testers for OpenAI back in 18 and 19 before it was cool. So, they started off, I've always tried to stay as far ahead as I can just to see what's coming around the corner. So they started off with their different models. They started off with Ada, and then they went to Babbage, and then Curie, and then DaVinci, and then DaVinci 2, and then DaVinci 3, and then DaVinci 3.5 is actually ChatGPT. They just changed the interface. And so seeing the evolution as it goes along has been very interesting. So definitely have bright, shiny object syndrome. And you have to know when to cut things off. So there's like the question is right now, do you use Midjourney for image generation? Do you use Adobe Firefly for image generation? Do you use ChatGPT for image generation? And the answer to me is whichever gives you the best result. Right. So we're using multiple tools. They're all relatively inexpensive. And if for those of you who aren't using the paid ChatGPT version, they've now got projects and research, deep research, like pay the $20, like, forego the 2 Starbucks coffees and pay the $20. It'll be worth it. And I'm not a salesman for ChatGPT and I get no commission, but it really is good. So that's the other thing is, can you consolidate tools? So with ChatGPT, and because I was a beta user and we have access to the API and a few different things, we actually integrate OpenAI's tools into things like Google Docs and Google Sheets. So when we're creating ad copy for clients, we can just like literally copy paste, use GPT for Sheets and just copy and paste it down, and it creates 100 new ads with variations based on prompting. And so it makes my teams really efficient to be able to use the tools that are out there. So shiny object, yes, 100%. I test out all these different tools just to see how I could use them, and then adapt and adopt where it makes sense, where I think there's actually going to be continued investment in these tools so that they'll continue to grow. But they're consolidating. Like ChatGPT can do so much now that it's only a matter of time until you kind of have to choose one. And I think that's their market advantage at this point.
Whenever I speak at conferences, it's one of the first questions I asked is put your hands up if you use ChatGPT. Everybody puts their hands up. I say, keep your hands up if you're paying for ChatGPT. And I can tell by how many people bring their hands down, with typically around 80% of the people, how savvy an audience is, I'll know right then. I'll be, okay, these guys, I got to dumb things down for these guys because they don't know what's happening. But the ones that keep their hands up, usually when I go to Europe, surprisingly, like everyone has their hands up and they keep those hands up there. They're paying. But I find when you go to the local conferences around the GTA, they ain't paying. So, and again, and I say the exact same thing you just said, Dave. I'm not an ambassador or affiliate for ChatGPT, but you got to get it. You just got to do it.
You have to. Like, I'm not on the pro version, which is the $200, but I'm hitting the limits now of or am I on the pro? I'm on the $20 a month package, whatever the $200 a month package is called. I'm on plus, not pro. That's what it is. But I'm getting to the point where I've bumped up against limits earlier and earlier in the month. So I may have to actually, and they say, oh, new extended option, and I still bump up against the limit. So I might have to just break down and spend the $200. But
yeah, you might have to cave. You're going to have to cave. It makes sense. I mean, that's a big jump though, from 20 to 200. But so, one of the recurring themes in the digital space, or recurring topics, especially with the emergence of AI, is the death of SEO. Right. A lot of people are talking about the death of SEO and whether SEO is still going to be relevant as people rely more and more on ChatGPT for recipes or any sort of output. Right. So more people searching on ChatGPT instead of Google. What are your thoughts on whether SEO is dead? Is it dying? Is it still alive and well? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I look at it as search is getting more and more fragmented, is really the way I look at it. People are still searching for stuff. That's never going to change. So how do you optimize for search? I kind of think of it as how do you give the best answer? If a podcast is the best answer, people will search on podcasts for this information and get that information. If video is the best way to illustrate that recipe as opposed to a text answer, then videos will still be the best answer for that. But just specifically for search, you can break search down into a couple different search queries, right? Like I like to think of it like Starbucks. Like if you just go to Google and you just type in Starbucks, you're going to get starbucks.com, right, as the search result with some information about Starbucks. If you type in Starbucks near me, you're going to get 3 or 4 results with a map. If you type in Starbucks Frappuccino, it's going to show you the Frappuccino page. So those are different types of searches. And if you're like, I want to buy a car, that's a commercial intent. If you're like, what is the shape of this leaf that I'm looking at on this tree? That's informational. And then there's also, searches associated with e-commerce. So it depends on what people are searching for, how they're searching for it, and what platforms they're searching on. People search for all kinds of stuff on YouTube. They search for all kinds of stuff on TikTok. They search for all kinds of stuff everywhere. So SEO is really information optimization, and optimizing for AI is really having the best, most unique answer to that particular search query or the particular search that people typed in. I don't think that's going to change. How it gets presented is going to change. How you answer that question and make sure that Google the machine or ChatGPT the machine or whatever else the machine makes sure that it has your information, that's going to change. But if all you're going to do is say the same thing as everybody else, then you're not going to stand out either way. So being able to have your own unique answer and your own unique thought leadership is really the key to this. So if you are unique and you have the best answer for that particular search query, that search that people type into Google or YouTube or TikTok or wherever, you will get found. So I think when people are optimizing for AI or optimizing for SEO, they are unspokenly trying to game the system. My thought process is have the best answer and you will get discovered as long as you do the right things to promote in the back end. Google is still driven by links from one site to another in terms of relevancy. So there are a number of things that you can do to still kind of game the system, but having the best answer to a particular search is still the method to win. And
you just answered the question, what's the difference between SEO and AEO?
I didn't mean to jump ahead, but it's large language models crawl and index sites differently and create this database of knowledge that's a little less structured. As opposed to Google, which creates this real structured map of linking in between. So having the right answer, it works for both.
Okay, so when we're talking about the future for digital agencies, all right, looking into the crystal ball here, where do you see your business, or what do you see your business morphing into, along with other digital agencies out there, as we evolve in the next, I don't even want to say, I think 2 years is too far out, like in the next 6 months to a year?
My agency is, I love the people who work in my agency. I'm very fortunate to work with some great people, and they are really specialists within their knowledge base. So, we have specialists who work with just on the SEO side. We have specialists who just work just doing Google. And within Google, people are specialized at just YouTube, for example. So I think those specialties are still going to be there. Knowing how to operate and work within those and what tools to use when and how to optimize, that's in like just looking in the short term, the kind of, as you say, 6 months to 2 years, that's still going to be there. And the longer term, AI is going to automate much of that. So it comes down to, I look at it like, how do you know, back in the day, if you were inventing a Model T or you drove a Jeep or something like that, you would know how to change the tire, fix the engine. If it got bogged down, you had additional knowledge associated with the inner workings of a vehicle because it was much more simple. Nowadays, when you're driving a car, you get in and you press the gas and the brake and you turn it on. That's what it's going to be, right? But who knows how to drive a car? Like you and I both know there's good drivers and bad drivers, but the car gets you there. So how you drive the car is what's going to matter. So, you know, strategic, to translate that into an agency perspective, strategically knowing what platforms to use when, because Google, the machine, may know how to do things, but Meta may be better in certain instances versus the future of what your website looks like. So what to use when, for which purpose, at which stage in the buying cycle, is something that's layers and layers of complexity beyond what the AIs can do probably for the next 5 years. And then when you get beyond 5 years, it becomes, okay, are traditional means of acquisition going to go away, right? You're still going to have warm outreach, which is reaching out to people you know. You're going to have cold outreach, which is reaching out to people who don't know who you are. You're still going to have content creation and information that you're creating. And you're still going to have some form of paid ads because Google makes its money from paid ads. So they will not eliminate all these things. All these companies, all these media companies, information companies make their money from paid ads. So there is going to be some evolution there that is going to make them money because they have to. So I don't know exactly what that looks like, but if we're all paying attention, we'll be able to adapt our agencies to be able to give our clients the best results, to be able to get, you know, the best results for their business.
You gotta remember, for most small business owners, this is not a hat they want to wear. They have to wear it. So ideally, having somebody to push those buttons and levers and somebody to hold accountable for it is ideal, right? For any small business out there.
Absolutely. I mean, there's going to be some people who want to drive their own car. And there's going to be some people who want to take the bus. There's going to be some people who want to fly, right? And there's some people who want to be pilots and all those different things. It's going to evolve. I don't know what it's going to evolve into, and it's going to be more and more fragmented, but it's going to evolve, and it'll be a fun ride.
Dave, this has been great. If our audience has any questions for you or how to get in touch, how can they do that?
Yeah, best way is on LinkedIn. Reach me on LinkedIn. Look me up, just Dave Burnett, and I'll be happy to connect with you there. I also do a little bit of thoughts on X, but only if you want some philosophical things. I don't do anything else on that side of things, but those are really the two best places to reach me. You
also have a book, From Bricks to Clicks.
I do. And that is actually an interesting snapshot in time about how it's a fable about how somebody wants to take their website or their business from a brick and mortar business to an online business. So that book was written about 10 years ago, and it does have relevancy if there's people who are listening to this who have not fully embraced digital yet. But if you're a step or two beyond that, then yeah, I wouldn't necessarily recommend that. I hate to be that guy who doesn't recommend his own book, but there's a very specific market for it.
Hey, and Dave actually wrote that book without AI. So
it was before AI. Dude.
Actual human wrote it. Can you believe it? Wow. We're going to see that less and less in the years to come as well. Most books are probably going to be AI written, right? So awesome. Dave, thank you again for your time.
Thank you very much for having me. I appreciate it. And thank you everybody for listening. Hope you have a great rest of the day.
Hey, thank you, podcast listener, for checking out that episode of Drop the Mic. If you liked that episode, I would love it if you went on over to your podcast platform and left us a 5-star review. And if you don't want to miss an upcoming episode of Drop the Mic, make sure you hit that subscribe button as well. Thanks again. We'll see you soon.